Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another famous battle, the Battle of Alesia, or Alicia. I'm not sure how you pronounce it exactly, because there's no way that could tell me online, which is unfortunate. None of them did it on the source that I have, so thus it is going to be Alesia, as I say it, in 52 BCE, or before Common Era, if you don't know, between Julius Caesar and Vercingetorix and Comus, I think, or wait, Commius? I don't know how to say that name. I know how to say Vercingetorix, though. That one's correct, and it's pretty awesome of a name. I think I might name my first child Vercingetorix. So, this battle is really awesome. It's one of Julius Caesar's greatest victories, and I really want you to think about it. So, let's just go to the battle here, or just the preamble here, the prelude. Of course, right before the battle, you have Julius Caesar with 60,000, 70,000 troops, 12 legions of cavalry, and most of his army is heavy infantry, which you note. Vercingetorix has 80,000 troops. He's on a hill fortress. Alesia is the hill fortress, and he's got a relief army of about 100,000 to 250,000 troops under Comus or Commius. Now, what was happening here is that Julius Caesar had previously conquered Gaul, or at least the Romans had. I'm not sure if Julius did. I didn't really pay attention to that part. Now the Gauls were unhappy with being taxed and everything, and so the higher-ups started to stage a rebellion, in which Vercingetorix and others became leaders of a rebellion against the Roman Empire. Julius Caesar was setting out to crush them. Now, Julius Caesar, was pursuing Vercingetorix. Even though Vercingetorix had more troops, he lacked the same veteran quality that Julius Caesar had out of most of his troops, or just the well-armedness, well-equipped form. Not exactly supplied, because they had probably better food supplies overall. And so, to protect himself from loss, Vercingetorix encamped himself on a hill fortress at Alesia. And at the same time, he sent out messengers over to his allies under Commius and asked for support. Now, Julius Caesar, following him to Alesia, had a few options at his hand. He could retreat, which he didn't want to do because it's counterproductive. He could attack the fortress, which would have probably resulted in a massive defeat of him, because it's like amazing of a fortress, at least for that time period. And it would have been complete suicide to attack, or try to siege and wait for the allied armies to come along, and then be not even just remotely vastly outnumbered and completely surrounded also, or alternately get starved out in Gaulish terrain. So he's got these options here, and he doesn't like any of them. And Julius Caesar, of course, the military strategist that he is, finds a way around it. And his solution is this. It's going to be very crude drawing. It's not drawn to scale or anything. It's just very rough shape. And I'll explain more as I get there. So, this is the solution, basically. You have Alesia, where the enemy army of the Gauls is encamped under Vercingetorix. And so, what we have here in this crude representation, these weird red boxes are supposed to represent the legions of Caesar's army, while these black lines represent the palisade walls. Now, these aren't just ordinary palisade walls. They are 4 meter, I think they're 4 meters high, standard palisade with watchtowers, with not only ditches, but also some of them had moats, because there was a river running up to the upper side of this and below it also. They're not exactly completely continuous. They were interrupted by these rivers, in fact. And there was also stakes placed along with other weird things, just to keep the Gauls away from attacking this. Of course, it took them a while to build this, and the Vercingetorix did try to stage a bunch of sabotages and raids to stop this from being built, but overall the Roman infantry was easily able to repel any Gaulish attacks by cavalry. So in the end, he completed the inner wall, and then when he found out reinforcements were coming, he managed to build another outer wall around, completely encasing his army. Now, I want you to take a moment to realize that this is brilliant, but also it's completely insane, because you can already imagine that if this had failed in any case, Caesar probably wouldn't have been remembered as a military genius at all. In fact, he might have died or anything, or been captured, or lost any prestige that he had, but it's complete insanity. If he had lost, he would have been ridiculed for it. but it worked. And that's why it's great. Now, I want you guys to realize the correlation between complete insanity and genius often to happen on the same general thought process. It's just how it works out in the end really determines how it's remembered. So, Julius Caesar built this system of two walls, and then also you see down at this black star, this is the camp that was later encamped by Commius with the reinforcements of Gauls. So, in the end, Vercingetorix and his army of 80,000 were trapped in Alesia with the native population. So he tried to get out and stop the attacks, but he couldn't. Julius Caesar had his builders well protected. He managed to build these walls. So he's got two fortifications facing outwards, and they're very hard to attack. So in the end, when the relief force did come, eventually they knew Vercingetorix' force was going to die of starvation. In fact, at one point, the Vercingetorix and the Gauls sent out their women and children that were living there, hopefully to be sent to like safety from the Russians, just like to get them away so they could live without starving. And Julius Caesar just left them in the middle of this no man's land between Alesia and his wall, and they all starved to death. I don't know why they didn't go back in or anything. I guess Vercingetorix didn't let him, which is just as bad on his part, but they all starved, which is kind of cruel, but it's Caesar, and he was after a victory here. So, what we have is now we have all these black over here, which is the array, very roughly, not to scale either. These armies aren't to scale, but just for demonstration, these black are the Gauls that were attacking. They pretty much surrounded, but they forced a more concentration on this side over here, which I think is the southwestern side of Alesia, or at least the encampment around Alesia of Julius Caesar. And thusly, they started to attack. They started really heavily pushing on this wall. And meanwhile, at the same time, then you had the coordinated attack of the Gauls from inside Alesia coming in. So the Romans on the walls here, around here, are all getting surrounded and attacked on two sides. But of course, they are well equipped in comparison, well armored, and well trained. So they are doing well. And of course, Caesar did have a few of his own troops still in reserve, trying to wait for them and make sure he could get them in any breaches to fight. So that was done. But I also want you to note that there was a few engagements prior to this main battle, but it was just failed attempts by the Gauls to attack. They attacked once, they failed. They attacked another time, they failed. And then eventually they attacked again at night, which is this main assault that ended up happening. So, Caesar's lines are spread thin. Eventually, what happened is that this side started to break through, and Caesar had to send whatever reserves he had left to go straight and fend these guys off from breaking through and funneling down both sides of his lines. And this part of the wall is pretty much lost to him. In fact, at this point, he was personally running through with his troops, trying to gain morale and make sure they don't break, and actually sent one of his trusted generals, I think his name was, such that it's like Ladius or something like that. Don't quote me on that one. You can look it up. It's Ladius. It's strange, but he's fighting over here, and he's in a cavalry legion, and he's just going wherever it is to just hold the line, make sure that the Gauls don't completely smash through. Now, as you can see, it's still not exactly a good situation for Caesar at all, since he's got a swarm of Gauls that vastly outnumber him, pushing through at one side here, and it already looks like he's going to lose. However, they catch a lucky break where certain troops over here managed to actually break through and then end up routing the remainders of the Gauls in this area of the fortress, or the palisade walls. And then what Caesar does is personally takes cavalry, whatever he can muster with him, to go around and smash this massive clumped up horde that is pushing through his walls from behind. And it's a daring and pretty much a move of last resort completely. He has no other options. His forces are getting pushed back here. They're holding strong, but they are in fact losing. They don't have the manpower to outmatch. So in the end, what happens is, seeing these cavalry come smashing from behind and chopping down Gauls that were completely unsuspecting and thinking they were winning since they had it surrounded, put a massive fear factor in the ranks of the Gauls, and it thus started some routing. Then also strengthened the morale of the currently fighting overstretched Romans, who were then also happy, started pushing back in. Together, it started a massive chain rout, and as that rout happened, the entire formation of the Gauls broke apart, making it easier pickings for the Roman cavalry directly under Caesar's control, who's coming in and actually fighting himself, which is kind of badass of him. And they are routing these Gauls, and before you know it, the entirety of the Gauls are routing. Meanwhile, the ones on the inside surrender to Julius Caesar, and it is his day, and it is an astonishing victory at best. Sort of lucky at some point, but it's just the crazy lengths that Caesar went to win this battle. You have to really think. First, he builds these two walls, these palisades around, which is just already unthinkable to most people. I would have never thought of that, or maybe after a long time. And it's just something you want to think about. Like, whenever you're being forced in any situation in the game, in a strategy situation where you're being forced, try to find, you know the options that are typical. Try to find the options that you can do that no one would think of. Maybe something that goes around outside the box like this. It might be insane, but it might be all you got, and it might be better than you expect. It's a risk, really. So that's why it's good. Just the example of this. But then also, you cannot underestimate the way that Caesar used morale in this battle. He personally inspired his troops by running through them all the time. He was going back and forth, micromanaging all the forces he could, which is just one thing a lot of to take out of him, and just go everywhere and make sure that his troops are holding strong. Very smart of him, especially since he's so outnumbered and in some cases surrounded. And also, starving all those people, though it might have also been for practical reasons because he doesn't want to deal with hoarding and shepherding all these people around. It's also that it completely detrimented the morale of all of those inside Alesia. And finally, the use of that rear charge and fighting with that rear charge and going directly in combat himself not only was a significant morale boost to his troops and also made it easier for him to command this flank, but also scared the living hell out of the Gauls, because you kind of get intimidated when you know that their own leader, if he dies, they're in disarray, is willing to fight you. It's kind of a morale thing. It's really smart play by Caesar, and I completely gained so much respect for him for this victory. Now, if we go to the results page, very simple. Julius Caesar, 12,500 dead. That is not too many out of his 70,000-ish. Of course, the numbers are heavily disputed for this all around, especially for the side of the Gauls. You can see 90,000, 200,000 dead. That is a massive range. It includes both the relief forces and the forces that were under Vercingetorix, but of the ones that survived, about 40,000 of Vercingetorix troops were captured in that, and then pretty much all the children and women who were sent out did starve in between in no man's land. So those were the exact results of the battle. So tell me what you guys think about this series, guys. Recommend any battles you want to see next, and certainly look at the battle yourself and just learn from Caesar. Think of the impossible, take a risk, and it just might pay off. It is a fantastic victory. Just to think of such a crazy solution that might actually work. It's not like it's complete folly to do something like that. Like, it's not beforehand that Caesar's like, all right, I'm just going to throw it all out here and build a wall and lose. No, he's thinking, I might be able to win this. It's going to be hard, but he can win this. And that is what he sought after. He'd rather take the risk to take a risk where he could definitely secure a victory, opposed to anything where he does not gain his victory at all. So it's just some philosophy there, some just general personality of how you have to address the battle, and then also just tactics with morale. Just keep that all in your head, guys. Thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Goodbye, my friends.